Welcome to Backstage with Kennedy. This little show will be your remedy. From Toronto, spanning across the sea. Cool people, lots of laughs. This is your favorite podcast.
Hello and welcome. My name's Kennedy from the Backstage with Kennedy podcast. I got a really great guest today, Russ Rankin. So Russ is from a wicked band that I've been listening to for quite a while. Good Riddance, absolute classics from California. And I got a lot to talk to Russ today about some really interesting stuff, as well as some really exciting stuff for everyone who is able to make it to what we have to talk about. So, Russ, what's brewing with Good Riddance right now? How are things?
We're practicing and getting ready to finally do these tours that they were booked basically 2 years ago. And then we all know what happened in 2020. And then we thought we'd be ready to go in 2021, and that ended up not happening. So here we are. So we got this run on the Eastern United States and a few shows in Canada as well, which we're stoked about. And then we're heading to Europe in June. So just looking forward to getting back to some kind of normal thing.
Sweet. Yeah. And who's going to be going on tour with you for that? Who should the people be also excited to see on top of seeing Good Riddance?
So the tour that we're going to be in Southern Ontario for, we're going to be with War on Women. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be, I think, with a band called Brutal Youth.
Brutal Youth they're sick. They've kind of become like a really.
I think we've played with them before. I really like them.
Yeah, they're one of the bigger bands in the Toronto skate punk, hardcore kind of scene, and I love them. I love them. They're good dudes. Absolutely. So, I know you're quite the hockey guy. A few people have told me that I should try to convert you to being a Leafs fan. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen. You are a Devils fan. Why'd you pick the Devils?
It's kind of a weird story. I'll try to keep it brief. So, growing up here in Santa Cruz, which is kind of a small beach town, there was no hockey. I fell in love with hockey at a really young age. I was exposed to it on television, and I just love the color and the speed and the violence, and I just, I mean, everybody has their story, like how they fell in love with the game, but then being where I live, like it wasn't like, oh cool, I love this, like I'm gonna do it all the time. Like there's no team here. This was before the San Jose Sharks came. Mm-hmm. And the closest team would have been Los Angeles, which is a 7-hour drive, and so I would just try to watch whatever I could, national broadcasts, ESPN was doing a lot, like 2 or 3 games a week. And so that's what I would do. And I learned about the game, became a student of it, and just studied it and learned all I could. And sometime around 87, 88, I remember I'm watching hockey, and for some reason the Devils were always on. ESPN just had a thing where I don't know why, but it seemed like the Devils were always on. Mm-hmm. And since I didn't have a team and I was watching every game, I was like, well, these guys are cool. Like I liked how they had at that point they had like people like John McClain, Patrick Sundstrom, Kirk Muller, Pat Verbeek. Oh yeah. They had some really skilled players. Mark Johnson. They also had some grit, and they had some fight in them. They had this big, huge, lanky rookie goalie named Sean Burke.
Oh yeah.
And Jim Schoenfeld was the coach that year, and he was his first year coaching, and he would be giving it to the refs every game, and he had these like purple suspenders on, and I just thought he was such a character. So I just sort of like got to know the players from watching those games, and I know other teams to watch. And what I didn't know was that they'd never made the playoffs before that, since they're in their whole existence. Wow. And that year, so I'm watching, and then it's the last game of the season. They're in Chicago, and if they win the game, they sneak in as the 8th seed in the what was it, the Wales Conference? Yeah, the Wales Conference. And so the Patrick division, they would sneak in, first time ever. If they tied or lost, they're out. So they're trailing the game. They're trailing late. John McClain scores on Darren Pang to tie the game. Then he scores again in overtime, and they won.
Hmm.
And I was just like, oh my god, they're going to the playoffs. Like this is my first time watching them, and they weren't. They just snuck in. They were the eighth seed. They upset the Islanders and then upset the Capitals the next two rounds, and they took Boston to 7 games in the conference final, which had the famous incident with Jim Schoenfeld yelling at Don Koharski to go get another donut, and all that whole stuff happened. So by then I was just hooked. I'm like, these guys are rad. This is an awesome team, and just stuck with them.
I think the Devils can thank you for their success due to your fandom. If the year you started cheering for them, they made the playoffs. See what?
That was Lou Lamoriello's first year. I didn't know that either, but that was
Oh
his
wow!
first year. That was his first year as GM.
When I was growing up, I was lucky enough that my dad brought me to a bunch of Leaf games, and it happened to be like every other game we went to was the Devils. So I actually started to like really enjoy the Devils back then as well. So when I was growing up, Patrick Elias was on the team, Jeff Friesen, Brodeur, obviously,
Yeah,
Scott Stevens. So I like that was a golden era for me as well for the Devils. So you saw some good teams, that's for sure.
yeah. I didn't know what was coming, but I was that season was pretty magical, and just to kind of started following him that year, getting to know the players, and then watching them go through that like first time in the playoffs, upsetting the two teams they were supposed to not win against, and then Boston was obviously a way better team, but the
Mhm.
Devils took them to 7 games. That was pretty cool.
Perfect. So back to the tour real quick.
Yep.
Is there a specific date that stands out to you when you like book these tours where you're like, I can't wait to play in that city? And do you have any like great stories about playing a show in that city?
I think every time we played Toronto, it's been amazing. Our very first time there, we played. It was called Ramp Rage, and It was at this. I think it was called the RPM Warehouse or something. It was down by the water. Massive space, huge stage, barricade. And there was like 80 people there, but we had such a good time. And every time we went back to Toronto, it was awesome. We played some memorable shows there for sure. So I always loved playing there. I was engaged to a girl that lived in Toronto for a couple of years, and I spent a lot of time in the city
Mhm.
apart from the band. And so I love it. I love the city, and our fans there are great. I don't know the whole routing. I probably should by now, but I know we're playing like some places we haven't played in a long time or ever, like Louisville, Kentucky. I know we're playing in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We're playing Chicago, which we haven't played in a while.
Mhm.
And then obviously Montreal is always great. Pouzza Fest is always fun. That's going to be our last show. I'm looking forward to Toronto. Obviously, I'm looking forward to Brooklyn, Asbury Park.
Mhm.
Those are always fun, and we have a lot of friends coming. I have a lot of friends in that area, that part of the world. So
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to all of it. Just being able to get back out and do it, a proper tour.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that. I think a lot of bands like that's kind of been the general consensus now that people are getting back on. They're just it's almost like getting back to standard life, like the way that we're almost like meant to be. Like if you're a road warrior, you're a road warrior. If you love being on stage, then you love being on stage, and that's when you feel at most home.
Well, we've done little things here and there over the last year or so, sort of easing back into it.
Mhm.
But it'll be nice to have several shows in a row, not just like go someplace, play a show, and go home. Even though those are cool in their own way, but it's going to be nice to be part of like a proper tour again.
100%. So, I got a funny story for you. This may actually catch you off guard. So, I was talking to a good friend of mine, Chuck Coles. I'm sure you know him. Chuck and I were
Do
conversing.
I know him? How would I know him?
He's one of the Toronto punk guys. He's been around for quite a while. He said he
Okay.
knew you.
Okay.
Anyway, he said that you have an imposter in Toronto at the Horseshoe Tavern. Someone comes into the bar and says that they want free drinks from the bar, and that they're you, and they're at the Horseshoe, which is wild, and I know you don't drink, so that's like
I
absolutely
actually heard
insane.
about this from Al Nolan.
Oh, really?
I heard
Okay.
about this guy from Al Nolan. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
You'd think he'd pick somebody with a little more cachet to impersonate.
I just heard that story the other day and I was like, you got to be kidding me. I was like,
Yeah.
I got to talk to Russ about that.
Yeah.
So, real quick, so I have like obviously I do love punk music, and I know that Southern California was a big scene for the punk scene. I've talked to Ephraim Schultz from Voodoo Glow Skulls and Death by Stereo, and I've talked to a bunch of dudes from San Diego, and they kind of all came up in that California scene. What was one of your bigger inspirations to get into the punk scene? Was it the skate side of things, or was it the actual music itself? Because I find that that scene was heavily skate punk, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Growing up in Santa Cruz, we're known for surfing and skateboarding. When you grow up here, it's everywhere. Like it, almost everybody tries it or does a little bit of it here and there. Like I fell in love with surfing and skateboarding, and when I was in high school, and at that time I was surfing more, and I was just kind of listening to reggae and like whatever was on the radio. And then I forget, I was at a we have a civic auditorium here, like a pretty big space where like giant shows would happen, and they would used to have surf movies, and so everybody would go and to this surf movies, and I was at one of those, and there was a segment where with skateboarding, and something about that, something clicked, and I started just focusing way more on skateboarding, like way more. And I was buying Thrasher magazine, and at Thrasher magazine they always have notes from the underground, and they would always have like a little report in the back about different types of bands and music, or if you subscribe to Thrasher you'd get the new album by whoever. And so I started looking at those, and like, and if I saw a band in there, like so if I saw a live picture of a band looked cool, I would go try to buy that band's album. And I was exposed, to punk rock by a guy that was in the high school marching band with me. He was like one of two punk rockers in my whole high school. And that's kind of when I transitioned from like surfer guy that listened to reggae to more of a skater guy. And I started getting, this guy played me Dead Kennedys. I'd never heard anything that cool before in my life. And I just dove in to punk. And so for me, it was the Dead Kennedys, quickly like realizing there's all this music around, like MDC. Like Santa Cruz is more north, like closer to San Francisco.
Mhm.
So we call it the Bay Area. And so I'm listening to bands like Fang, Code of Silence, no, Code of Honor. Code of Honor was the name, and Social Unrest. Bands like that. Dead Kennedys obviously were from San Francisco, but also at the same time I loved all the bands that were in Southern California at that time, specifically Bad Religion, Circle Jerks, Adolescence, DI, TSOL, Battalion of Saints, all these kinds of bands. So I just dove right in and listened to everything I could.
Sweet.
But it was very wrapped up in skateboarding here in Santa Cruz for sure.
Yeah.
Like you go to a skate park or someone's ramp and have something, a boom box, and there'd be a punk mixtape playing always.
That's wicked. And I remember, well, from what I've heard, those compilation tapes, mixtapes were huge back then. Like that was, I've talked to a few people who really want to bring those back because, I mean, as much as I hate to promote them, Spotify does like those curated playlists, right? I'd love to see like physical copies of those come out again. I think that would be wicked.
Yeah, like it's in Apple Music, I've made people playlists,
Mhm.
and because all of my vinyl that I collect over the years, I've archived it digitally into my iTunes library, so I can make people like pretty crazy playlists with like pretty rare stuff,
Oh yeah,
which is
that's wicked.
almost the same. It's almost the same, but it's not like a physical like here you go.
Yeah,
It's more like I send you a message and it's got this playlist and you just listen to it. So
wicked.
you can sort of do that, but it's, yeah, there was something about making an actual physical tape that was pretty cool.
Hmm. So, Russ, what would you say to a young Russ when you were like first coming into the punk scene? If you had any words of advice for yourself?
So I lived kind of outside of the city, like in the mountains when I was growing up. And so there would be in downtown Santa Cruz, there was like a bus station, and the last bus home was like 9 or 10 o'clock at night to go. And I didn't have a car. This is before I was driving. And right across the street from the bus station was this place called Club Culture, which at that time, that's where all the shows were. And like, you know, Black Flag played there, DOA played there, and I never went because I'm like sitting at the thing and waiting for my bus. And I would have told myself, like, go to that show and fucking sleep in an alley. Like,
Yeah.
go see Black Flag, go see DOA, go see like, because I mean, I got to see a lot of cool shows, I'm not gonna lie, but I missed a lot of cool shows too, because I didn't want to miss my bus. And like now I'm thinking back, I'm like, what an idiot. Like, who cares where you sleep? Like, go see, you're gonna go see Black Flag. I mean, I don't know. Like, I wish I would have done that.
No, that's really interesting. Like, yeah, I have friends from like the suburbs of Toronto, and they run into the same thing. They're like, you know, I got to work tomorrow, and it's a hour and a half drive home, so I got to go home. And I'm like, you're not even gonna see the last two bands. Like, what's going on? But I feel that. So, Russ, what for someone who has not seen Good Riddance live, what can they expect out of your live performance? Is there anything that kind of differentiates you from the average band that someone might see, or something that could catch them off guard during your set?
It's hard to say. Our sample size recently has been so small, and we have one of our members is recovering from a pretty catastrophic car accident. So he's not going to be 100%. He's going to be there and he's going to be throwing it, but he's not 100%. And plus we're all old men, older than we used to be. I think our live thing has always been sort of torn in a few different directions. Like, we hit it pretty hard, harder than some bands, like as far as like the ferocity and the intensity. We're really influenced by a lot of like hardcore bands more than we are like Fat Records melodic bands, but we do have melodic songs. And so part of our show is like this serious kind of heavy ferocity, but it's also like slapstick comedy at the same time, like mostly because of our bass player. Like, he keeps it light, he keeps it fun, and he doesn't take it too seriously, and people really enjoy watching him play and watching his antics. And so I think something about that combination of all that works for us and makes the shows usually be pretty cool and pretty fun for everybody.
Beautiful. Well, I do want to wish Chuck a speedy recovery. It's nice to hear that he's going to be coming on tour and going on stage with you guys. That's pretty badass, man. Like, that's a comeback reel right there.
Yeah, for real. He's doing great.
That's awesome to hear. So, Russ, I do want to wrap this up. I like to keep these nice, short and sweet. But I hope that everybody does go check out your tour. Can you throw any dates out there for the people?
I don't have it in front of me. I don't even.
I will post.
I
them
don't know.
It's all good. I'll post them in the bio so everybody can grab their tickets and check out Good Riddance and Russ when they come to your city. Thanks so much, Russ, and we will talk soon, man. I can't wait to see your show.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay, brother.